My dad raised his wine glass and said, "Vivian's in med school now, Vanessa." Well, she gave up right. The laughter around the dinner table didn't die down. I stood up and walked out. No jacket, no goodbye. Just the sting of winter air as the door slammed behind me. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when I thought being the quiet, dependable daughter meant something. That if I worked hard, didn't complain, and always made room for others, especially Vivian, someone would eventually see me. I used to imagine it would happen during some small, quiet moment. Maybe my dad would peek into my room and see me highlighting passages in my textbooks by flashlight long after everyone else had gone to bed. Or maybe Mom would catch me wiping down the kitchen counters after Vivian stormed out yet again mid-dinner, leaving behind a mess of excuses and eye rolls. Instead, nothing ever came. No acknowledgement, no thanks, just expectation. And yet I still tried. Every Sunday at 6 a.m., I made Dad his bitter black coffee 2 sugars never stirred. I learned how to fold the laundry exactly how Mom liked it, and I used my own allowance to buy Vivian a graphing calculator when she swore she'd never survive pre-calc without one. I was 17 when Grandma Mai told me in a whisper that she'd set aside a college fund for me. "For your future," she said, slipping a small envelope into my coat pocket. Inside was a bank slip $42 $1,000 in a trust in my name untouched since I was 10. She kissed my forehead and added, "Don't let anyone else decide what you're worth." At the time, I didn't really understand. I just nodded, held the slip tight, and promised myself I'd protect it. But that promise got harder to keep. The year I got into King's College London, a full acceptance but only partial scholarship, I sat down with Dad and showed him the tuition numbers. His brow furrowed, but he nodded. "We'll make it work," he said. "Your mother and I will do whatever it takes. That's what family does." I believed him. I didn't know then that "we'll make it work" meant draining my fund without asking. That instead of tuition, the money would go toward a new white Lexus for Vivian's 20th birthday and a luxury family cruise that I wasn't invited to, because as Mom said, "You'll be too busy with school, sweetheart." They didn't even tell me. I only found out because I went to the bank to transfer a small amount for books, and the account showed $167. My hands went cold. I remember standing there staring at the screen like it was lying. Refreshing. Checking again. Same result. I walked home in a daze, fingers numb, chest tight. And when I asked, just asked, Dad shrugged. "We had to shift some things around," he said. "Vivian needed a reliable car and your mother's back was acting up. The cruise was part of her physical therapy." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "But that money was for my tuition. Grandma set it aside for me." He frowned. "Don't be dramatic, Vanessa. You're still getting an education, aren't you? You're in London. We made it happen, didn't we?" Yes, I was in London, on borrowed time scholarship stress and a part-time cafe job that barely paid for groceries. They had made it happen by taking everything that was meant for me and using it like it was theirs. Still, I stayed quiet. I thought maybe if I just proved I could rise above it, they'd come around. I thought maybe I owed them some grace. After all, parents weren't perfect, right? But grace without boundaries isn't love. It's slow erasure. And the worst part, they didn't just spend the money. They rewrote the memory of it. By the time I came home for winter break, everyone acted like the fund had never existed, like I'd imagined it. Like the sleepless nights and homesickness in London were just the cost of finding myself. I remember sitting at the dinner table that night, poking at overcooked turkey, listening as they went on and on about Vivian's latest anatomy lab. "She's really going to make something of herself," Dad beamed. "Can't wait to see her walk across that stage." And then he raised his glass. "Vivian's in med school now. Vanessa, well, she gave up right. Time slowed. Everyone chuckled, Mom, Uncle Hyan, even Aunt Lily, who once told me she thought I was the most grounded of the cousins. I looked around the table and realized they weren't going to change. Not for the truth. Not for me. So I stood up, left my untouched plate, and walked out. Into the bitter cold. into the silence I'd always known. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't going back to being their shadow. Not anymore. When I got back to London, the city felt colder than usual. Not because of the January wind slicing through my scarf or the rain that never quite stopped, but because of the weight I carried with me. The silence, the disbelief, the raw pulsing realization that my own family saw me as disposable. I didn't tell anyone what happened that night. Not my roommate Mia, who offered me a blanket and a mug of hot tea when I stumbled into our flat at 3 a.m. Not my professor when I missed a tutorial and he asked if everything was all right. I told myself I just needed to push through the semester, get my degree, keep my head down. One more year. But it wasn't that easy anymore. I couldn't focus. Every time I sat down to study, my mind wandered back to that bank account emptied behind my back, to the photo Vivian had posted online of her beside her Lexus captioned, "Hard work pays off," to the way Dad had said it. Vanessa. Well, she gave up right. That line kept echoing in my skull like a cracked bell. The tipping point came 3 weeks later. I was walking back from the university library when my phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "Hey, sweetie, your sister's spring semester is coming up. Could you help her with the application fees? Just a few $100. You know how stressed she gets. Love you." I stopped walking, stared at the message. A few $100. From me. After they'd drained the entire college fund Grandma had saved for me. After they laughed at me over dinner like I was some dropout disappointment. Now they wanted help. I didn't respond. The next day, Mom called. I let it ring out the first time, then again, then a third. By the fourth try, I answered. Her voice was sweet, too sweet. "Hi, baby. I hope everything's going well. I haven't heard from you, so I just wanted to make sure you saw my message about Vivian." I said nothing. After a pause, her tone sharpened. "Vanessa, are you seriously ignoring me over this? I thought you were better than that." There it was. That twist, from gentle guilt to calculated shaming. I swallowed. "I can't send money right now. You can't or you won't," she snapped. "Because I've seen you post about that cafe job. Surely you can spare a couple $100. It's not about the money," I said quietly. "It's about what you took." Dead silence. Then a sigh. "Oh my God. Is this about that account again, Vanessa? For the last time, your father and I did what we had to do. Vivian was in a bad place and you stole from me." Her voice cracked like glass. "We are your parents. Don't speak to me like that. After everything we've done for you, how dare you accuse us of theft?" I laughed. I didn't mean to, but it just came out, cold and bitter and hollow. "Everything you've done for me? You mean calling me a failure? Spending my college fund on a cruise and a car for Vivian? Gaslighting me when I asked where the money went?" Mom's voice rose. "You are being ungrateful. Do you know how hard we worked to give you a life in London? You gave me nothing," I whispered. "I did this, me, and Grandma." That's when she lost it. "You always act like the victim. You think you're so perfect, but you're just cold. That's why people don't like you. That's why we never told you everything. Because we knew you'd twist it." Click, I ended the call, and I blocked the number. That night, I opened the envelope Grandma had given me all those years ago. The one with the original bank slip. There in her soft cursive were 4 words scrawled in blue ink on the back, "For Vanessa's freedom only." I stared at that line until the letters blurred. Then I stood up, wiped my face, and pulled out my laptop. I started digging. Every email, every transfer confirmation, every old message from Dad about just moving things around, every photo of Vivian with the Lexus, receipts, text logs, my acceptance letter, Grandma's handwritten note. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew I wasn't going to let them rewrite my life. Not anymore. I didn't sleep much the rest of that week, but it wasn't insomnia, it was focus. The kind of sharp, unblinking clarity that comes after heartbreak when grief curdles into strategy. I moved like a ghost through my cafe shifts, smiled at customers, frothed milk, cleaned counters, all while mentally cataloging everything they'd taken, every manipulation, every time I'd swallowed my voice, just to keep the peace. This time I wasn't swallowing anything. I started with the bank. There were 2 transfers made without my permission. Both were authorized using Dad's name. I remembered once, years ago, him insisting I give him backup access to the trust account, just in case something happened to Grandma. He even laughed when I hesitated. "You trust your own father, don't you, stupid?" But also traceable. The money had moved from my education fund into their joint account just weeks before Vivian's birthday, and again before their therapeutic cruise. I got the statements. I highlighted the transfers. I printed them all out and tucked them into a neat little folder I labeled Theft and Timeline. Next, I compiled every communication. I screenshotted Mom's text asking for money for Vivian, her call log, her voice message guilt-tripping me. Even old emails where Dad insisted I didn't need to worry about tuition that will make it work. And then I found it. Buried in a shared family Dropbox folder no one had cleaned out in years. A scanned receipt from the car dealership. Title Viv's Lexus gift thanks Mom and Dad. But the attached bank statement. It ended with the last 4 digits of my account number. I sat back in my chair staring at the screen. It wasn't just financial mismanagement. It was premeditated fraud. They'd signed their names, used my money, then buried the trail under false generosity. But Grandma's words rang in my head. For Vanessa's freedom only. So I didn't storm into a courtroom. I didn't go public. I went surgical. First, I booked a call with a solicitor who specialized in family trust violations. Not flashy, not corporate, just sharp-eyed and patient. His name was Theo, and he spoke with a dry calm that felt like water over hot stone. "You have enough here for civil action," he said, flipping through my scanned documents. "Maybe even criminal. Depends how far you want to take it." I didn't answer right away. Then I asked quietly, "Can we freeze the accounts or flag them somehow?" He smiled. With the right motion. Yes. By the end of the week, we had initiated proceedings to flag misuse of funds tied to the original trust. The courts wouldn't seize anything yet, but they would notify the family. And that meant Mom and Dad were about to feel a very sudden chill. I didn't warn them. I went on with my life. I refocused on school. I doubled down on my thesis, stopped checking their social media, and started walking home through a different route just to clear my mind. Until one morning, my phone rang. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I checked it. Dad's voice. "Vanessa, we need to talk. I don't know what this is. We got some notice from a solicitor about the trust account. Your mom's freaking out. Call me back, please. Let's sort this like family." I didn't respond. The next day, an email from Mom. Subject, "Vanessa, please. We just got a terrifying letter from some law firm. What are you doing? Are you trying to destroy this family? Call me, immediately. Destroy the family." No. I was holding up a mirror. They just didn't like what they saw. The thing about betrayal is that it's never really about the money. It's about who they decided you were allowed to be. And my family had decided I didn't get to be more than a cautionary tale. Vivian was the future. I was the detour, the support beam, the reliable background character who existed to lift her higher. But I was done being their silence. So I sent one message. To both of them. You'll be hearing through legal channels going forward. I will not be speaking to either of you directly. I hope one day you understand why. Vanessa. Then I turned off my phone, opened my laptop, and returned to my thesis. But even as I reclaimed my autonomy, I didn't know what was coming next. I thought the legal notice would just startle them, make them uncomfortable, maybe push them to apologize. Instead, what they did next was a declaration of war. I didn't hear from them for 2 weeks. Not a peep, no calls, no messages. It was quiet. Too quiet. And for a moment, I thought maybe they'd taken the hint. Maybe they'd realized they'd crossed a line. Maybe they were feeling guilty. I was wrong. The ambush came on a Tuesday. I was heading into a late seminar, sipping my usual flat white when Mia, my roommate, rushed up to me. "Vanessa," she said, breathless, holding out her phone. "You need to see this right now. It was a Facebook post, public, from my mother." A long performative wall of text with a photo of her and Vivian, arms around each other, smiling beneath cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. The caption, "We've always tried to support both our daughters, but sometimes, no matter how much love you give, one child chooses cruelty, slandering family, dragging us to court. We've sacrificed everything for her. Some people just have no gratitude left in their hearts. Praying for peace." Over 200 likes. Comments from family members, distant cousins, old friends. "Sending prayers, sweetie." "So sorry you're going through this, Barb. Kids today don't know loyalty." I felt the coffee curdle in my stomach. My name wasn't mentioned, but it didn't have to be. Everyone knew who the ungrateful daughter was. Then came the texts. From Aunt Gina, "Vanessa, what on earth is going on? Your mother's in tears." From Cousin Dylan, "Did you really sue your parents? This is wild." And worst of all, from Vivian, a DM that simply said, "I hope it was worth it. You've humiliated us all." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I barely made it through class. The walls felt like they were closing in. I sat in the back, eyes down, trying not to cry as the professor droned on about international policy, completely unaware that my entire personal life was unraveling online. That night, I deactivated every social account: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even Pinterest. I just needed to disappear. But humiliation doesn't stop when you log off. The next week, I was pulled aside by the university's bursar. They'd received notice that my financial backing might be in dispute. Because the trust account was tied to my tuition guarantee, the school flagged my file as under review. I stood there stunned as the woman explained gently that if the issue wasn't resolved, I could lose access to my academic portal, and my scholarship, and my visa. I walked home in a daze. I didn't even cry that night. I just sat in silence on the cold kitchen tile back against the dishwasher, staring at the dark. They weren't just defending themselves, they were dismantling me. Theo, my solicitor, was livid when I told him. "This is retaliation," he said bluntly. "We can move for an injunction, but it'll take time, and frankly, they're playing dirty now." I nodded numb. I had no more savings. My hours at the cafe had been cut. My thesis deadline was looming. I was exhausted, lonely, and suddenly on the brink of losing everything I'd fought for. One night, I found myself standing outside a pawn shop, clutching the necklace Grandma had given me on my 18th birthday, a tiny silver bird in flight. I stood there for a long time, and then I turned around and walked home. I wasn't ready to give that up. Not yet. The next blow came via email. My part-time position at the cafe terminated. No warning. Reason: conflict of interest. Apparently someone had called the cafe owner and suggested I was under investigation for financial fraud involving my own parents. The email didn't say who, but I knew. Mom once told me she still kept in touch with Mrs. Lambert, the cafe owner's sister. They weren't just trying to embarrass me anymore. They were trying to erase me. And for a while, I let them win. I stopped replying to Theo's emails, skipped class, slept all day, cried at night. Mia tried to help, brought me food, left notes on my door, but I couldn't face her, because I'd believed them. The voices in my head were louder now than ever. "You're cold. You gave up. You think you're better than us. You ruined your own life." I thought I was strong enough. I wasn't. Until the letter arrived. A plain white envelope, no return address, just my name carefully written in ink. Inside was a folded piece of paper. It read, "She kept every bank receipt and every photo, and she told me, one day they'll try to take it from her, but Vanessa will know what to do. You're not alone. Love, Aunt Harriet," enclosed a USB drive. I plugged it in. Inside a folder titled, "For Vanessa," receipts, photos, notes, audio files, Grandma's handwritten notes detailing every deposit into my fund, a scanned will, a memo from the financial planner, even an old voicemail from Dad thanking Grandma for handling the college fund so we don't have to. Proof, all of it. That was the moment everything shifted. I wasn't broken. I was armed. I didn't say anything right away. I just sat there on the floor of my bedroom, lights off, laptop glowing in my lap, staring at that folder. Each file was a lifeline. Each receipt a quiet truth. Each timestamp a weight lifted from my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. And I sure as hell wasn't alone. Grandma had known. She'd known what they were capable of, and she had prepared for it. And Aunt Harriet, she had waited until just the right moment. I called Theo that night. He picked up on the second ring. "I'm ready," I said. The next day, I walked into Theo's office not as a broken daughter, but as a client. We laid it all out: the timeline of theft, the misuse of trust funds, the digital evidence from Grandma's files, and most importantly, a handwritten amendment to the trust that Grandma had drafted 2 months before her stroke. It wasn't notarized, but it was detailed, precise. She had even signed it. In the event of financial manipulation by family members, Vanessa is to retain sole ownership and oversight. These funds are for her education independence and personal development. No exceptions. Theo stared at the screen, lips pressed together. This changes everything, he said. We filed a motion to freeze all remaining accounts associated with the Carter Family Trust. We submitted a complaint to the university's legal department, along with notarized documents confirming the legitimacy of my tuition fund. We drafted a cease and desist order for any social media defamation, and we requested an injunction of asset misuse targeted directly at Mom and Dad. All of it quiet, precise, legal. Not a whisper to the public. I didn't need a Facebook post. I had a judge. But that wasn't the only shift. Something inside me had changed, too. I'd spent my entire life being the helper, the peacemaker, the quiet, reliable one in the shadows, while Vivian shone in the spotlight. But not anymore. I reclaimed my academic standing. I met with the bursar and provided the files. My tuition block was lifted within 72 hours. And then I walked into the Career Fellowship boardroom, where I was scheduled to present my thesis on global economic trauma recovery, and I delivered it flawlessly. Afterward, the board director shook my hand. "I've read hundreds of these," she said, "but this was lived, not just written." 2 weeks later, I got the call. "Congratulations, Miss Carter. You've been selected for the UN Humanitarian Investment Fellowship in Geneva. Full ride. Housing included. We'll handle visa sponsorship." I hung up and cried for 15 minutes, not because I was surprised, but because for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone's approval. I had done this myself. Mom and Dad, though, they were spiraling. Theo had warned me once the court notices were processed, they might lash out again. And lash out they did. Another Facebook post from Mom, even more cryptic, more self-pitying. Vivian joined in with a TikTok story subtly implying some people will do anything for attention. But I stayed silent because I knew something they didn't. They were about to lose everything they'd built on my back. 3 days before my move to Geneva, I got an unexpected message request from Vivian. "We should talk. I think we've both been manipulated. Can we meet?" At first, I wanted to ignore her, but something told me to listen. I agreed. 1 coffee. Neutral ground. In public. She arrived in designer heels and a blazer too stiff for the cafe. I wore jeans and a t-shirt that said, "Empathy is strength." She didn't order anything. She just sat down and opened with, "Look, I know things got out of hand, but you suing Mom and Dad? That's intense." I said nothing. She continued, her voice suddenly softer. "I didn't know they used your fund. They told me it was from Dad's bonus. I swear." I watched her. It could have been a lie, or maybe she just didn't care enough to ask back then. I finally spoke. "Do you know where the money came from for your Lexus?" She flinched. "No." I pulled up the photo from Dropbox, the receipt, the bank routing number. Vivian's eyes widened. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Then, they really—" I nodded. She looked down. And for the first time since childhood, I saw something real flicker across her face. Not guilt, not pity, but shame. We didn't reconcile that day. This wasn't a movie. But she looked at me before she left and said, "I'll stay out of the way." And I'm sorry for all of it. I watched her walk out into the rain. No umbrella, no arrogance, just silence. And me, I stood taller, because they had tried to bury me. But Grandma knew better. She planted me instead, and I was finally starting to bloom. The hearing date was set for a Monday morning in late spring. It wasn't a full trial, just an evidentiary proceeding to determine if the Carter family trust had been misused. But in the crowd of family drama and whispered social speculation, it might as well have been the Super Bowl. I wore a gray suit Grandma had given me the year I started college. It still fit. Theo met me outside the courthouse briefcase in hand, his tie perfectly straight. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. "They have no idea what's coming, do they?" he smirked. Not a clue. Inside the courtroom, Mom and Dad sat at the respondent table. Dad wore a smug little smile, arms crossed, like this was a PTA meeting gone rogue. Mom looked brittle. Her usually perfect hair was frizzed at the crown, and her knuckles were white around a half-empty water bottle. Vivian wasn't there. Neither were any of the cousins or hangers-on. It was just them. And me. Theo opened with surgical precision. He laid out the dates of the transfers, the inconsistency between the trust's intent and the way funds were siphoned, the deliberate hidden uses, Lexus payments, cruise tickets, real estate deposits not tied to my name. And then he presented Grandma's handwritten amendment, signed, dated, scanned, and backed up. The judge, a woman with kind eyes but steel in her voice, read it 3 times, then turned to Mom. "Mrs. Carter, did you at any point inform your daughter that these funds were being repurposed?" Mom blinked. We thought we were acting in the best interest of the family. Vivian needed a fresh start, and Vanessa had her barista job. She seemed fine. "Did you inform her?" the judge repeated. "No," Mom said. "Quiet now. And did you assume access to accounts based on your name being on backup paperwork from when Vanessa was a minor? She's our daughter," Dad snapped. "This is all a misunderstanding." That's when Theo stood up again. "Your Honor," he said, calm and crisp, "my client is prepared to demonstrate that not only was there a pattern of financial abuse, but also public emotional defamation, documented manipulation, and illegal appropriation of trust assets in violation of fiduciary duty." He handed over a folder. Inside were the social media screenshots, Mom's posts, Vivian's videos, the chain of guilt-tripping texts, and then an email forwarded from Grandma's lawyer dated the month before her stroke. "Please ensure Vanessa retains full control. Her parents have already tried to divert funds once. I want this protected. She is the only one who has never asked me for anything." The courtroom fell silent. I looked at my father. His jaw twitched. He wasn't in control anymore. The judge ruled decisively full restitution of all misused funds with interest, immediate removal of Mom and Dad as financial custodians or trustees, authorization for Vanessa Carter to assume sole executor rights over the remaining assets, a permanent non-disparagement clause filed to prevent future public defamation, and one more thing. A formal written acknowledgement signed by both parents admitting to their breach of trust and misuse of assets. They tried to protest, but the judge simply said, "You can comply or we proceed to criminal fraud charges. Your choice." Outside the courthouse, I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I didn't post. I just walked out into the sunlight, turned my face upward, and breathed. It was done. 3 weeks later, I boarded a flight to Geneva. The fellowship welcomed me with open arms. I was assigned a project on economic repair models in post-conflict zones. My cohort was full of bright, sharp minds, people who'd never heard of Vivian's birthday party or my mother's subtweets. And for the first time in years, I wasn't trying to prove anything, I was just living. But the story wasn't quite over. One afternoon, I got a notification on LinkedIn. A journalist from a mid-tier financial outlet had published an op-ed about trust abuse among affluent families who mismanage educational funds. The byline inspired by the true story of Vanessa Carter, who now works with international agencies on financial resilience for displaced youth. Apparently, Theo had spoken off record to a friend in legal media. The article didn't mention mom or dad. It didn't have to. The story resonated. I got messages from people all over the world, women, students, professionals, even a few quiet messages from folks with names I recognized, family names. But I didn't engage because I wasn't bitter. I was free. I used a portion of the Reclaim Trust to open the Carter Resilience Fund. It provides emergency scholarships to students facing family financial sabotage. The first recipient, a girl named Layla. Her father tried to force her to drop out of med school to help pay off his gambling debt. We covered her tuition. She sent me a postcard that read, "You saved my future. I'll pay it forward, always." Sometimes people ask me if I ever forgave them, mom and dad. And here's the truth. Forgiveness isn't always a warm reunion. Sometimes it's a locked gate with a garden behind it. I built that garden. I live in it now, and they don't have a key. What would you do if your family tried to erase you and your future? Would you walk away quietly or fight back with silent power like Vanessa did? Tell us in the comments, have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you? Your story might help someone else reclaim their voice. And if you made it this far, hit subscribe for more real stories of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. Because sometimes the quietest ones make the loudest impact.